Hey guys, so classmate asked, what's the difference between a while loop and a do-while loop? So here I have opened Eclipse, and I'll be running my programs on this IDE. So to start off, what are loops? Loops are pieces of code that execute statements at multiple times. To start off, let's see examples of while and do-while loops. So for every while and do-while loop, we need an initial condition. So for our while loop, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called I. So int I equals 0. And we're going to set it equal to 0. And the other one for our do-while loop is going to be called, so do-while loop is going to be int j, and it's also being set to 0. So these are our initial conditions. It's what our loop is going to be checking for. So let's start off with our while loop. So what makes a while loop is that it will only run if conditions are met. So that means if our while loop, for example, states that int I has to be less than 5, then it'll only run if int I is less than 5. So then if we have our condition int I is while I is less than 5, and we want to print it out, so we say system.out.println, and we want to print it out to our commands prompt over here. So we're going to print out I, and then we're going to have a space, so plus, and keep a space between each one. And then we say, for example, I++. So that means that each time we print it out, after we print it out, we're going to increase the I value by 1. So let's see what that runs. So as you can see on the side, it runs 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So basically that's what we expect, right? Because I is 0, and we're making sure that I is less than 5. So then each time that it's running through the system, like each time it's going through the while loop, it's going to print out whatever value it is, and then also be added plus 1. So first time it's 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, and then once it gets to 4, we add again to get it to 5. But 5 isn't less than 5, at least not according to the computer, because you have to have a 5 is less than or equal to, and if we run that, then only will 5 be printed out, as you can see here. But since we don't have that, since 5 cannot be less than itself, then it's only going to stop at 4, so it'll go up to 4. So what's the difference between a do-while and a while loop is that a do-while loop will run at least once. So to understand what I mean, let's look at the structure of a do-while loop. So for a do-while loop, we'll first write out do, and then we have our curly braces, and we have the matching one at the bottom here. And then we write out while. And in this while loop, we're going to have our condition. So again, we're going to say j is less than 5. Now notice how I'm putting j instead of I, because remember that whenever we have the integers are immutable, which basically means that they do change. So after this while loop, I no longer equals 0. I becomes 5. So we want to actually see what happens like when while and the do while loops have the same variable. Like the same variable value. So we're going to use j because j does equal 0 because we haven't changed it yet. So here we have j is less than 5. Now remember, what's really weird about this is usually whenever you have like a statement here, you don't add a semicolon here. But here we have to add a semicolon because it's required, because this is what's at the end of our statement. So notice that if you don't do it, you are going to get an error, as you can see by this like red dot here. So we have to add in a semicolon to make sure that it's complete. So now let's going to add in the same conditions. So if we copy this code that we're going to do over here, remember that again we're using the j variable instead of I, so we replace j++, and replace this to j in the system.out.println. And now if we print this, then again we get the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's the same thing. Then really what's the difference? Well, in this scenario, there's not that much of a difference because, again, we're using the same conditions. There's not anything really tricky. I mean, anyway, 0 is going to be less than 5. Anyway, 0 does fit this condition. But what happens when this initial condition that we have stated does not equal whatever we put in here? To see what happens, let's change the initial condition. So let's make the initial conditions of I equals 6 and j equals 6. So basically now what happens is that we know that what's going to happen with this I is that in this like conditions, like even the I and the j within the these conditions, the 6 is no longer going to be less than 5 because we know that 6 is greater than 5, and so is the computer. So let's see what happens. Notice here I added in this println statements so that whenever we print this out, the code, we know what's the difference between where the while loop and do while loop is. We can see what's actually happening. So once we run this, we see that this while loop actually didn't print out anything, and the do while loop did print out 6. And this works with our descriptions of what a while and do while loop is. A while loop will run only if the conditions are met, and since we know 6 is not less than 5, it's not going to print out anything. However, a do while loop will at least print out once. It's still going to print out 6. Therefore, the difference between a while and do while loop is simple. A while loop requires that the conditions must be met, but a do while loop can be at least run once. And that's it. I hope this video helped you in understanding what the difference is between a while and a do while loop.